Okay, so I'm still thinking about the whole bassline-oriented kind of Baroque harmony vibe and how it relates to jazz music, and I can't help but think of like Tom Jobim's tunes because they are so non-2/5y. Like most jazz musicians are really set up to play over 2/5s, 2/5 to 1, that kind of thing, or just 2/5s moving around, sort of Benny Golson harmony or things like Moment's Notice. It's all just like Moment's Notice is this, isn't it? Okay, so there's so many 2/5s in that, and you will play your 2/5 dates. And you have all that stuff ready to go, and everything ends up sounding like bebop. It's great. But actually, what people find difficult is when you come across a progression like, for example, Insensatez by Jobim, where you've got movement which is definitely not based on 2/5s. Sixth chord actually there. That kind of thing, right? There's a 2/5 there. The rest of it, there's no 2/5s, and some of the chord motion is unusual from the point of view of bebop soloing. So how do we deal with that? And there's a few things. One thing that's kind of terribly important is that actually the chord qualities aren't random, and it's based on the combination between the chord and the melody note. It's not necessarily anything to do with chord scale theory, although of course you can use chord scale theory to improvise over these tunes, and a lot of people do. But I just want to approach it more from a compositional mindset. What was Jobim doing? Well, we know that Jobim was really, really interested in classical music. I don't think he was actually formally trained. I'm not sure. Somebody with more knowledge might know. But he was also influenced heavily by choro music, which is the kind of 19th to early 20th century popular music of Brazil, which has, if you ever play choro, you'll know that it has lots of interesting chord progressions and very rich bass movement and harmony, influenced by Bach and all these other sort of classical composers. Some of it even sounds almost like Chopin. So there was a very rich kind of harmonic background culturally for Jobim to come from, even only playing Brazilian popular music, which is amazing. It's one of the amazing things about Brazilian popular music is the richness and sophistication of the harmony. So what's going on here? Well, obviously we have a melody line which kind of sticks around A an awful lot if we're in the key of D. I think Jobim's original key is B minor, but obviously most people play it in D in the jazz world because it's easier for the horns. So B minor's not that bad though, so they should probably man up and just do it. Okay. Okay, see what's happening there? So we're saying the melody is kind of orbiting around A. It goes up to that C, but we don't really, from a point of view, if I was looking at this from a point of view of, say, Partimenti, in the Gierdingen book, Robert Gierdingen, what's his book called? The Music in the Galant Style, or The Art of Partimenti by somebody else, who I can't see at the moment. I'll put links to those books below. They're really interesting books. They're a bit dense if you don't know anything about classical music theory, if you've never looked at any figured bass. Figured bass itself isn't complicated though. I think, it's conceptually easy to understand. The hard thing is being able to play it on the guitar. You have to know your intervals. You have to know your diatonic intervals more specifically, so that means really knowing your scales. Anyway, I digress. So, we can kind of reduce that melody down to an A. Going to G, and stays on G. So got this chromatic bass line. This incidentally is the lamento bass line. Different variations of the harmony of that. What would happen there? I like that's there's all kinds of variations you can do on that, like coming from this sort of world, you know, that is a famous lamento bass line associated with sorrow in Baroque and classical music. One of the more famous examples is the Crucifixus from Bach's B minor Mass, which is an example of that particular ground bass pattern. And also it's used in Dido's Farewell from Dido and Aeneas. In terms of modern jazz, we're more used to it being like bass, being used in things like My Funny Valentine. For example, we'd harmonise it differently in a more jazz way, but would that even work if I did it in a kind of a more Baroque way? No, not quite as good a melody. And one tune which does kind of follow the Baroque harmonisation is No Moon at All, which is conveniently in the same key. No Moon at All goes... So there we go. So that uses the same harmony, right? So that is Baroque, that one. And I like to play it that kind of, if you look at the melody, 6-3, 6-3 with that minor, 6-3 again, and then, which is kind of like Purcell's harmonisation of Dido's Farewell. Okay, so yeah, so there, I mean, in the Jobim example, so we're thinking about the melody, we're not just thinking about, that's important, we're not just thinking about the bass line or the harmony, we're thinking about how the melody relates to the bass line. This is classical, right? This is classical thinking, right, okay, so we've got that going on. So how do we enrich that a bit and make it more interesting? Well, I mean, we want to turn them into full chords, so the obvious one to do is you add a third, or in this case a tenth, to the first chord. This is nice. I don't really know what this chord is called. It's a 6-3, I guess. I like to play this instead of the usual diminished. Sounds a bit more, beautiful to me. It does kind of have the flat. Does kind of have the flat 2 in there of the chord as well. It's a bit weird. So, but we're thinking about the voice leading anyway. So, this is down a scale step. And we'll go down chromatically this time. So we've got these tenths going down chromatically, minor tenths. A major tenth widens. So the 6th now, so this is the 6th chord. So we can just play a triad and sing the 6th over the top. It's nice that goes to, so we have a 6th there, right? Bassline goes up by a semitone, and we have 2-5-1, right? But the rest of the chord can stay the same. So that's kind of cool. Sorry, getting ahead of myself there. So I'm not really thinking about what those chords are, but as a matter of fact, they happen to be, in this case, this is the simple one, 5-3. Down a semitone to the 7th degree, the natural 7th degree of the minor scale. Raised 7th if you prefer, and that would be a 6-3 chord, major 6-3. Going to a minor. So I mean that's probably where it differs from like most classical composers would write something maybe with that. But he's written a E flat here, which isn't in the key. But obviously that's a very different quality from that. So it's almost like as it is here, it's almost like a F7 chord. Another 6/3, so that's a G over B. So I mean, if we were notating these chords in jazz notation, it would be D minor, triad, A/C sharp. We will call this F7 / C for now, G/B. Okay? That's an unusual resolution for most jazz musicians. But it comes purely out of the bass line and the melody. The melody stays on G. There's no reason to change that note on D. Sounds good. Okay, so this is the classical version. It's not actually what Jobim plays. Jobim adds an extra voice in, and the extra voice starts on the minor 7th of the first chord. It goes down. Staying in the key, goes down to B flat, goes down by a step. And the next one, ooh, that's a good question. That's an awkward transition. Maybe we'll just go straight to the G on that chord to stop us from getting a parallel octave. And then this beautiful chord. I don't know what that's called. With the B flat in it, makes it a little bit more pungent. It's like a 6/3. What is that chord in reference to the C? That note in reference to the C sharp. It's kind of got the 7th and the 6th in. Maybe just add in a G there if you've got to add in a note, just the 5th of the C minor 6th chord. So the chords go D minor, and then this thing A/C sharp and flat 2, maybe flat 9. Resolution. Yeah, it's unexpected. But you know, from a point of view of you know funny notes, all that's happening is the B natural's going down to a B flat. So the 6th of the major 6th of the key is going down to the flat 6. You know, so it's kind of a bit like. It's just kind of just continuing the movement. So how do we solo over it? Well, use the minor scales. You can use a triad there. You've kind of got its... I'm not really sure. I haven't worked out whether I think that's a F7 chord, F9 sort of thing, or whether I just think it's a C minor. I think she plays a C minor, I think. I mean, there's not really much of a difference in jazz between a minor 6th and a dominant anyway. I mean, C minor 6 is kind of the same thing as F7. I mean, that is really good. To sweat that one too much, boom, you know. So that is basically C, D minor 6th going to resolving to B flat major 7th, right? So that's actually quite easy. That should all be much easier after that. So that's usually kind of the thing. People go, oh, it's non-functional harmony. It's absolutely functional. It's as functional as Bach, anything Bach ever wrote. It's just that we get puzzled by Jobim because the music is really well written, you know, and we're not used to that. I mean, the original standards were well written, but the original sheet music has chords that jazz musicians don't play. We've simplified everything, but you can't simplify Jobim because you know the chords are too cool, and he's a proper composer, and from an improviser's point of view, that can be baffling. But hopefully, you can see that basically it all belongs to D minor, and it's all got a very strong function in D minor, and it kind of follows the historical precedents of the great composers. Even it's not like Jobim's just making up random chords. And I think it kind of aggravates me a bit when people get too into this idea of Jobim as like writing really weird chords. It's like, well, no, he doesn't write chords that are that weird. If you look at it from the point of view of it being classical voice leading, almost, Another classic example is the way he does Jobim Masu. He starts on what classical musicians would understand, what Baroque musicians would understand to be a 6/4/2 chord, or first inversion. It does that, right? It's all voice leading. It's like, what's happening in the upper voices? Not much. It's kind of going, and then it goes, it steps down diatonically, really. But the bass line is going boom, 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 boom. And that's where the interest lies. And of course, the melody is so the melody is just like an ostinato going round and around while the bass line moves against it. Not dissimilar from Insensatez, which is oblique motion, right? I mean, there's not that much contrary motion. You've got Inuto Paisajem, which goes, which is nice, but I mean, Jobim's genius is not born in isolation. It relates to the great histories and traditions of music, both in Brazil and also in Western Europe, of course, and also in the United States as well. So it's that fusion. But I really think he was really a choral composer almost in the way he wrote for the guitar. He turns it into a little choir, voices moving around, and there's not enough of that. I get bored of like doom doom doom, all the time. So when I say I'm not interested in harmony, I think what I'm not interested in is like jazz harmony, like what we think of as jazz harmony, where here's a chord, now play some weird scale, here's another chord here, and everything just moves around randomly. I love that kind of tonal harmony, the functional, beautiful kind of harmony that you get from the great tradition, and I think Jobim is very much a part of that. Anyway, I'll rant over. I hope you find that video useful, and might even help you solo over the tune. Alright, bye.